Why don't we flip the script and just give that all away? And so when you go onto the site, you can go through that same process, but with the same firepower that I had, with the same math that we had, with the same AI that we use to set rents and figure out what to pay for houses and how to manage the expenses. We could do the whole thing for you, and you never have to leave the site. So it's not like I'm going to send you here to get a mortgage. I'm going to send you there to get an inspection. Corwyn, you never have to leave the site. So you pick a house on the site. You say, George, I want to buy a house in Charlotte. You and I look at a house, you pick it, and then bang, everything starts. And Corwyn, you do absolutely nothing.
Good morning, and great morning, guys. Welcome to another fabulous. Look at y'all saw how I do that. If y'all watching me, y'all saw how I expand on that fabulous episode of Exit Strategies radio show, guys. Hey, I'm your host, Corwyn J, Melette, broker on of Exit Realty Low Country Group in beautiful North Charleston, South Carolina. Hey, y'all know I love to get them shout outs. No, I got to shout out my mama. You know, she live out there in Moncks Corner, y'all. So from Monkey's Corner, let's get back to Hollywood. What you know, no good. Thank y'all for listening and tuning in. Pastor Elder Vanderbilt Evans Sr., if I don't put that senior on that thing, that dude still to this day at 70-something years old, he ain't gonna tell you how old he is, will still jack me up. And it's the funniest thing. I love them. The Q family that tunes in, the McKellers, you guys rock. And everybody that listens to us in Muddy Mullins, guys, Marion County, we appreciate the tune-ins, and those who tune in from around the globe, you guys rock. We keep bringing it to you because y'all keep asking for it. And I thank y'all for being on the receiving end of what we're trying to give. So look, I'm super excited about today's episode. I love technology. I love real estate. I love when we're able to mix those things together and create a situation or create an opportunity for others to get engaged and involved without having to quote unquote do all the heavy lifting. So I'm super excited about this conversation today because we have with us as a guest today none other than George Ellison. So I wanted to get into a couple of things. Our episode today is breaking barriers for everyday investors. What if real estate investing wasn't just for the wealthy, guys? What if it wasn't? What if it was accessible to everyday families? So today's guest, George Ellison, has spent decades managing multi-billion-dollar portfolios, guys. And we said that with a B, all right? With a B, that's the capital B, all right? Leading public real estate companies, and has now found himself in the role of co-founding Propbee to put the power of wealth building into the hands of first-time investors. Again, so he's been doing this, guys, for over 20 years, former CEO of 2 publicly traded real estate companies. He is passionate about showing families how to use data and tools to remove the fear and move themselves from fear into action. So today, let's get it in. George, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Corwyn, thanks for having me.
You're quite welcome. So look, I'm excited about this conversation, and my listeners sometimes, our listeners sometimes understand when they hear it in my voice how giddy I am. So I'm giddy to have this conversation with you today. So if you don't mind, give that high level overview, introduction of you, who you are, and what Propbee does.
Okay. Real fast, I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, small town. My father worked in a brick plant. My mother was a nurse. The only way out of some of those situations is through education. Went to Pitt, got an engineering degree, worked for General Electric for a few years as an engineer, business school, not onto Wall Street, which is some of the things you were referencing there. So I was in the financial services business for about 30 years. And then, as you also mentioned, we were recruited, myself and my team, to go run a company that was a little distressed, a little banged up. And it was a REIT, if your audience is familiar with REITs, Real Estate Investment Trust. So it was a publicly traded company. As I said, it was in a little bit of trouble. So it took us about 5 or 6 years to get it on track, and then we sold it. So we'll talk a little bit more about the size of the market and what we did versus what Propbee does. But so when we sold that company in 21, we decided to start up another company that would be a single-family rental REIT as well. But then it occurred to us that the real size of the market, and this is where a lot of the audience that you speak to, and as I said, I watched numerous of your videos, this is right in the wheelhouse of what you're promoting. And so this is a way to help not the institutional folks where I was, because if you look at the size of the market, probably less than 3 or 4% are big institutional players. Despite all the noise and all things that have been written, it's still 95 or more a mom and pop business. The problem is that there's a natural cap to how much you can do. So everybody knows somebody who rents homes, a brother-in-law, neighbor, whoever. And so if they do, that means they have to take care of tenants, take care of the house. There's all kind of issues, paperwork, taxes that goes along with it. And so you might be able to do one or two or maybe even three, but then it just gets too much. Then there's another group of people that know that Corwyn's doing this or a friend of his is doing that, but I don't have the time. I'm working 15 hours a day. I don't have the time outside of my W-2 opportunity to do this stuff that my brother-in-law is doing. So I can't do it. So Propbee, our idea was, as an institutional player, what I did every day was I looked at houses. I put bids in on those houses. I would inspect them through our team. Then we would purchase them. Then we would insure them. Then we would rehabilitate them. And then we would list them and rent them to a family and then take care of that family. So we would do that whole spectrum. So the idea was, why create another institutional company? Why don't we flip the script and just give that all away? And so when you go onto the site, you can go through that same process, but with the same firepower that I had, with the same math that we had, with the same AI that we use to set rents and figure out what to pay for houses and how to manage the expenses. We could do the whole thing for you, and you never have to leave the site. So it's not like I'm going to send you here to get a mortgage. I'm going to send you there to get an inspection. Corwyn, you never have to leave the site. So you pick a house on the site. You say, George, I want to buy a house in Charlotte. You and I look at a house, you pick it, and then bang, everything starts. And Corwyn, you do absolutely nothing. It's like when you order a package. It's at the factory. It's now at the FedEx place. It's now on the plane. It's now on the truck. It's out for delivery. Here's the picture on your front porch. So you log on every night after, you come home, have dinner, help the kids with homework. You sit down with a glass of iced tea or whatever, and you call up the site and you follow the journey of, here, honey, here's the house we bought. And we're getting the mortgage. And now we're getting it inspected. And now we're getting it insured. And now they're fixing it. And now we either can move into it ourselves, or you can flip it, or you can rent it. So this is right for all the people that you're trying to speak to say, guys, we have to do something to make more money than the money we're making. You're talking about legacy. You're talking about educating people to help them make more money. This is a way that we will do everything for you. You, as a real estate guy, it's a daunting task to buy a house. It's a journey. It's tough on a young couple doing it. It's tough on you if you're a professional. Corwyn, everything is done for you. You pick the house. I do everything else.
Let's take a short break.
You served your country with pride. Now it's time someone serves you. At Country Boy Homes, we believe every veteran deserves a safe, beautiful, and affordable place to call home. We proudly offer VA loan-friendly, manufactured and modular homes built with integrity, quality, and your family in mind. Whether you're retiring to the peace of the low country or starting fresh with your family, we're here to build the future you've earned. Give us a call today, 843-574-8979. Country Boy Homes, built to honor, built to last. I love it. So, George, you touched on a few things in there. So, one of the things that we really focus on this show, and typically I deliver this a little bit later, if you will, in the show, but I'm going to deliver it now because it's uber relevant. Your work is seemingly and sounds as if I had to stand before somebody and swear in, I would say it this way, rooted in a belief that anyone, not just the wealthy, again, can, build legacy through real estate. And we're very big on that with our audience about creating and building wealth for the generation that's yet to come, because we understand what our word tells us. So what inspired you to focus on first-time investors and quote unquote the everyday family?
Well, I think, as I said, part of the journey was going from financial services, where I was a banker and always taking care of other companies, to transitioning to running our own company. And you run a lot of things yourself. It's very, very different when you're working for somebody or it's you. And so that was very interesting. As you know, a lot of ups, a lot of downs, can get a little bumpy, can be very rewarding. So we thought about, when we sold that company, we thought about doing it again. But I think that, let's go over some numbers. Real high level. There's about 125 to 139 households in the US. About 60% own their homes, 40% rent. So 40% times that number is like 45 or 50 million. So think about that. 45 or 50 million families rent in this country right now, and it's growing. Okay, so now let's break that down further, because some of that I want to serve, some of that I'm not interested in. So if you live in an apartment building or a garden apartment or a high rise or whatever, what's the split between that and single family homes? And that splits 2/3, 1/3. So that means 2/3 of the people are in apartments. Let's push that over. But that means 1/3 of that number is 16 to 17 million families rent single family standalone homes. That's a gigantic market. So we sat there and said, should we start another institutional company? Well, wait a minute. This is right in front of us. 90, as I said earlier, if you added up all the institutional companies, it's not even 500,000 homes. 17 million rent homes, 500,000 is the institutional guys. So that means 16.5 million people have landlords that are doing this. And that's the people that you're talking to. 16.5 million people either own one or two or three or four, but that's it. So we were like, why are we focused on 3% of the market? Why don't we go the other way and serve the other 97% and give them, like, democratize what we did? Just give it away. Just give it away. So I had 15,000 homes in about 28 cities. Why don't we take the math that I used every day, all the algorithms that we use to figure out rent, what to pay, how much insurance, all the issues that go into renting a home? Why don't I just give that away? And so your folks, your friends, who are now my friends, will get on the site and they'll say, like, I'm looking at this house. We're beta testing just in Charlotte. We're getting ready to go to Atlanta probably the end of this month. So you'll be able to say, I want to buy a house in Atlanta. You'll see every home that's for sale on the MLS. Every single one, Corwyn. Every single one. So, like, there's probably 20 to 22,000 homes for sale in Charlotte. You can go on Propbee, every single home. And I'll say, Corwyn, let's go through some filters. What do you want to buy? And you'll say, George, I want 10%. I'll be like, okay, 10%. That's the return. Corwyn's getting a little greedy. All right, all right. So we'll put in 10%. I'll say, Corwyn, do you care about, so think about your audience. Do you guys care about, does it have to be capital appreciation you want to make? Does it have to be cash flow positive? There was a woman you had on about a month ago. She's talking about cash flow positive and negative and the pros and cons of that. And Corwyn will say to me, no cash flow negative. I don't want cash flow negative. I want cash flow positive, and I want 10%, which of course everybody's going to say that. So you and I are going to put those in. Now we could put in 20 other filters, but let's just keep it simple. So I'm going to put in 10% up in the right-hand corner, and I'm going to make sure it's cash flow positive. There's the price they're offering at. I'll tell you, mathematically determine what the rent should be, and bang, up pops the return, 10% or more. And every house that fits your filter in Charlotte pops up on the screen. Now, at 10%, they're not going to be 5,000, but there might be 50 or 60. And then you're going to pick that house and say, George, this is the one I want to go after. And that's it. And then we'll say, do you want to buy this house? Corwyn, you hit, yes, I want to buy the house. Bang. Alan Tate, I don't know, Alan Tate in Charlotte, part of the Howard Hanna group up in Pittsburgh. So that's our part. We have a partnership with every vendor I'm going to talk to you about. So Alan Tate, our partner. And so a woman from Alan Tate will send you a text and say, Corwyn, I see you want to buy a house. So you're talking to a human being. This isn't a bot. This isn't like AI or whatever. This is a human being. There's two women that are totally devoted to Propbee at Alan Tate. That's all they do. They take care of us. So, so Denise will ping you and say, Corwyn, what's going on? Are you represented? Do you need representation? You obviously probably would not. You say, yes, I need an Alan Tate rep. So now you have your own broker. Then we move into, do you want a mortgage? And I don't send Wells Fargo's site, Corwyn. You never leave. I just ask you, are you an investor or are you going to live in the house? And you'll say, I'm an investor, George. And so as debt service coverage is one kind of lending for a person who's going to live, there's a different kind of lending. So you say, I'm an investor. So we have a group, Churchill Real Estate. You can look them up in Charlotte. That's my leaf guy. I apologize. So Churchill Real Estate now reaches out to you and says, let's pre-qualify you for a mortgage. And you start that process. So every night you're coming home, you're following online. How's the mortgage going? What process are we in? What do I need to send? They'll tell you what you need to send. Then you say, okay, I need to do an inspection on this house. Inspectify. You say, yes, I want an inspection. Now, any of these services, you can say, I'll do that myself, or I don't want to do that. But let's just go through all the services. So you say, yes, I want an inspection. A person from Inspectify pings you. They say, Corwyn, what kind of inspection do you want? You say general, maybe radon, maybe this, maybe that. Credit card, I'll be there in 48 hours. Inspection comes. So before you buy, as you know, as a real estate agent, like, what shape is the house in? So I just bought a house through the site over the last month. just to make sure all my stuff held together. So Effectify came in and they said, it's going to be about, I think it was a $315,000 house. They said it's going to be about $15,000 worth of work. Here's what we're going to do. Okay, great. So we close on the house. The insurance guy pings me, gives me a quote on insurance. So everything's done. You never leave the site. You picked the house, you financed the house, you inspected the house, you insured the house, you close on the house, and now the house that I just bought, Lesson is the name of the company, Lessen. Lesson is now at the house, fixing the house. So Core, when they get there, they call me up and they say, look, the 15,000 that we quoted you is totally fine. And we have connected the inspection to the people who do the work. So when I tell you it's 15,000, that's also a scope. As a real estate guy, you know there's a difference. So the scope of the work, the price of that work is determined by the guy who does the work. So I'm not going to say to you, oh, I said 15, but it's probably going to be more like this. But what they did say to me was 15's nice, but if you wanted to put a little bit extra into this, we can make it really beautiful. I said, okay, fine. So we're going to put a little bit more into it. They're at the house right now. I'm going to go see it tomorrow because I was out of town. We'll go see the house. And then you and I would sit down and say, do we want to rent it? Are we going to live in it? Or do we want to flip it? So I'll probably pay $315. I think I'm going to put probably 30 into it. So I'll be in for $345. But Corwyn, I think we could offer this thing in the low 400s. And that's 3 months. That's like 3 months of work. So Corwyn, you could do that 2 or 3 or 4 times a year. So for your folks who are all working like crazy and don't have a lot of time, or they're capped out on how much of this they can do, both of those, like one of the questions that you sent earlier, like who's the audience? So the audience is people who are doing it, but don't have the capacity to do more, or people who want to do it and just flat out don't have the time. Corwyn, you pick the house, and then all you do is track the package. Just track the package. And then tell me where to send a check.
That's amazing. So what I've noticed, and so for our listeners, guys, look, I've been playing around on the website. So the metrics are impressive. But I do want to touch on one thing, George, before we come back and hone in on that piece, because you said something I think is very profound. We've had this misnomer, misinformation, if you will, about institutional investors buying up everything. And what you just pointed out is that they represent a much smaller share than many believe to be the case. Why do you think there's such misinformation? Where my question will be or is. And then from there, we're going to move into these metrics because we want people to get the real meat and potatoes on Propbee today. But give me your opinion on that if you don't mind.
Sure. So I was in that chair, right? I was a CEO of one of those companies. So I was always in investor meetings and earnings calls. So that question comes up all the time. There was I think the guy's name was Joel Miller you had on a while back. Was it the guy that wrote the book, the real long book? It was like a 600-page book the guy wrote or something. So he was talking about like education gets you through it, like knowledge gets you through it. But let's stick managed by fact. So the facts are, as I said, 17 million families are renting homes. About 500,000 are owned by institutional people. So just right off the bat, let's just get the numbers straight before I'll give you my opinion in a second, but let's get the facts straight. So when people hear about it, it's like, okay, well, how big is that group? How big are they? And literally the biggest guy was the guy that bought us. And I think, Corwyn, he just has 100,000 homes. 17 million homes are rented. The biggest guy has 100,000. Next biggest guy is, I think, Invitation Homes, and they have like 60,000. So it just drops. So when you add it all up, it's not even 500,000. So the reason why is the reason why it always is. You don't want to hear that a young couple got squeezed out by Wall Street. You don't want to hear that you live on a street where Wall Street, there's an article like Wall Street is your neighbor. It's this scary program. But as I said, at the end of the day, and first of all, again, being on the other side, you could argue all kinds of things. Wall Street really moved in after the crash and was buying up a lot of homes and saving neighborhoods and creating jobs in neighborhoods and fixing up houses that were being left to run down that people had left. And so there's all kind of data that those companies put out, which I'm not a part of anymore, that talks about how many jobs they create, how much money they put into communities. And so there's two sides to a pancake. So the bottom line is that this market is still dominated by your listeners. The people who want to invest or the people who are already investing are easily over 95% of the market. So the big guys can do whatever they want to do. This is still a mom and pop market. And so what we're trying to do is actually a little twisted. We're trying to take all that math, all that science, all that art, all that firepower, and give it to the 97%. So your listeners will have the exact same firepower that guy with 100,000 homes has. You guys will have so setting rent, for example, we look at all public information, all available information to help you set the rent. We're looking at tens of thousands of homes. So when we tell you what the rent should be, we have figured out, when I tell you it's 1950, it's not 1800 and it's not 2200. It's 1950. That's what we did for a living. As a public company, you have shareholders. You got to get that rent right. Because if you're too high, it sits empty. If you're too low, you don't cover your expenses. So setting the rent is the most important issue. And we give that to you for free.
Wow. So you guys have, again, this metric system, if you will, or the system where you guys have your metrics out. Let me phrase it that way, so we don't think we're in grade school and trying to learn the metric system. You guys have gotten this thing here, man. It's like a muscle car. It's literally like a muscle car, like sitting there, boom. When I look at it, give us some of the, how did you get there? And why are those metrics so important?
Well, as I said, the way we got there was simply it was sitting right in front of us. We were saying maybe we should start another company and build up. We had 15,000 homes. Why don't we try and build that again? So that was one idea. It requires an enormous amount of capital because remember, in that situation, I'm owning the homes, right? I have to have, like when we sold the company, I think we sold it for $2.5 billion. If you want to get into that, and we were one of the smaller guys. So I think Invitation Homes has a market cap of like 8 or 9 or 10 billion. It's a very heavy capital exercise when you do what we did. This was, wait a minute, we could create a prop tech site that's very, very low capital and people will use it and it can be free. So instead of like flying all over the world like I was doing, trying to raise billions of dollars from this guy or that guy, it was like, wait a minute, we're totally looking at this the wrong way. So that's why we flipped and said, what if we gave away all of our brain power? What if we gave it away to people? Would people be interested in that? And so I think there's a need. We think there's a need for people to have this tool. And so it'll make the people who do it already, rent homes already, it'll make their life easier. But more importantly, it'll make the market bigger because people that can't access that tool in their toolbox now can get there. And so that was sort of where, what that means to people. It's a way to empower people, but be just as strong, just as fast, just as accurate as those guys sitting up in New York.
So why is it important? We talk about this on occasion on the show, George, but why is it important for people to think like a pro? Like, why should they, again, your system, your platform makes it factual, makes it the bullet points you said, lead with facts. Why is it that people should really take the emotion out of this wealth building journey?
Well, I think if you look at and you've talked to so many, one of the shows I was watching, I think you just hit your 100 mark. So you've talked to dozens and dozens of professional investors. And there isn't one of them that you have interviewed that, of course, they're in the equity market. Of course, they're in the bond market. They might be in commodities or gold or whatever. But Corwyn, there isn't one that isn't in real estate. So somehow the REIT market was created to try to help people buy stocks that got you into real estate. But this is one step further. This is if you own homes, have current income coming in, it's an inflation hedge because the price of the house usually goes up. Even after the crash, the market has recovered fourfold since where it was. So you have an appreciating asset. It's a hard asset, a real asset. There's tax advantages as depreciation, writing off interest. I put this house I just bought in an LLC, so all the expenses I can write off. So it's a great investment. And so there's no major investor, big or small, that isn't in commercial and residential. It's a massive asset class. But the people that you speak to, they don't know how to get there. They can't get in. Like, what am I going to give $5 million to Blackstone or something? Like, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So to your point of when you started, it's not, if you have enough money to invest in residential real estate, this is the way you can do it safely, quickly, and all the inertia that's stopping you from doing it is gone. Just pick the house, Corwyn, and we'll take you on the journey. We'll hold your hand the whole way and just tell me where to send the check.
Love it.
You're bringing it and to be practical about it, think of how big that market is. Sure, I could go get 15,000 more homes, but what about the 16.5 million people that are already doing it? That's who we want.
And that's the legacy piece in it, because it sounds like you're at this phase where it's not what I'm doing for myself, is what I'm doing for others. How am I empowering other people in order for them to be able to change the trajectory of their family for generations yet to come?
People
You've
need
done it.
money. Everybody needs more money. I was
Mhm,
explaining to a guy in Florida. He was like, everybody needs this. Everybody needs more money, but I got a job. I'm working, or working two jobs. I don't have the time to do this. I can't be following all this stuff. I'm going to
mhm,
send you a dashboard every day once you own that house. It's going to show you all the expenses. There's going to be a property manager taking care of it. You're not taking care of it. But
mhm,
again, as I said, if you say, because there's some professionals out there that'll say, well, I'll do the inspection or I'll do the rehab. Fine. I just showed you can pick them all. You don't have to pick
mm,
them. But I'm just saying, if you want to, I'm working as a whatever, a construction, I run a construction company. Those guys can't breathe. They're so busy. So it's like, of course I know how to do this. Of course I'd like to buy houses. Of course I could fix some houses. I don't have the time. I'll do it for you. And that's why you do it.
that's huge. So, George, we're quickly getting up on the end of today's show. Where can people get to you? Where can they get to where's the site? How do you want people to engage?
So Propbee, Propbee, like property B, Propbee. Bees test well, they tell me, Corwyn. So the marketing people were like, bees test well, George. I was like, okay, well, then a bee it is. If y'all want it to be, we'll make it a bee. So Propbee, Propbee, all one word.com. And so that'll show you the whole site. You can register for the site and start playing around. You can play around on the site without registering. Also we tried to, the journey that I was saying that, like, let's say you and I were working together to get you a house. We drop a video every week that walks you through that process. So you'll see the screen and I'll be talking to you saying like, okay, let's look for this. Let's look for that. I looked at a house. Cool. And I looked at a house. My guys will send me the houses and then I'll do the videos afterwards. So they sent me a house 8:37 Friday night. I was traveling over the weekend. Monday morning, Labor Day, I sit down to tape it. The house is gone already. Because if you use Propbee and say, and my guys do the same thing you do, they're like, let's find all the 10%. Let's buy all the 10% we can and no negative cash flow. I can't tell the family that I'm losing money on this. So positive cash flow, 10%. They look for some other stuff. But those are the main two things my guys always click on. Corn, it was gone. It was available Friday. It was gone Monday because Propbee is showing you where value is. So you can go on the site, look at houses, figure out what you like to buy. Then you'll follow the whole journey from mortgage to insurance to inspection to closing to fixing to property management. So propbee.com takes you there. You can go on YouTube and there's an investment of 5 minutes of me looking at a house. Why do I like this house? Why do I not like this house? Why is this too cheap? Why is this too expensive? So it gives you comfort like, okay, this is easy. This is easy. George's going to take you through this in 5 minutes. And I'm going to pick. So
Love it. I love it. So, George, thank you so much for that. So, I want to hit our listeners, guys. I want to hit you with this as we wrap up today's show and give you, if you will, the takeaway. First and foremost, the key takeaway, I think, from all of this is you don't need deep pockets to start investing. You need the right mindset, which we talk about all the time here on the show, the right tools. You got Propbee, you got George. Look here, you got George, you got it. And confidence. And that comes from the action. As you act, you will gain and increase in your confidence. As you have successes, those wins, you will definitely grow in your confidence. So again, George, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on the show with us today. My takeaway from you, George, real estate is one of the most powerful paths to financial freedom. We know that, we believe that when everyday people have access to data and education, which you're giving them, they can start building legacies that last. So my friend, I really appreciate what you're doing and how you're working diligently and faithfully out here to make a difference in people's lives. So, George, look here, I'd love to have you back on the show in the future. We'll definitely get to work with your team and get you scheduled to get back in because there's so much information that we still have yet to peel back in these layers about what you're doing and what Propbee is able to help people accomplish.
Maybe
So
we
again,
can you do a screen share like inside of your show? I'm being serious. Is that possible to do a screen share where we could like walk people through stuff?
yes,
That's what we
definitely.
seriously. That's what we should next time. Walk people through like this is how easy this is, guys. This is really, really. We're gonna make one of those daunting tasks easy. That's my promise.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, George, again, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. For our listeners, guys, look, y'all know what it is. Y'all know how I feel. You know what I say. I always put the two of those things together and I give it to you this way, which is to tell you that I love you. I love you. And we're going to see you guys out there in those streets.